Okay guys, so I've got a really fun video today. We get to play Corvair, and more specifically we get to make some progress on the engine rebuild for my 64 Corvair Monza coupe that has been sitting patiently in the background of my videos for the last year, waiting to have its engine rebuilt. So if you saw my last video on this car, I basically sanded and prepped and painted the engine bay and got it all ready to receive a motor, and it's basically ready and waiting for its rebuilt engine plant to come into it. So that's looking good. I'm really happy about how that turned out. Check out that video if you haven't seen it. And since that video, I've done a lot of research. This is my very first engine rebuild, and I've torn down some motors. I've parted out a couple cars. I've been tinkering on engines or cars for a few years, but when it comes to actually tearing down every nut and bolt of an engine and putting it all together, I haven't done that before. So super excited. I love a new challenge, and I've had a lot of fun working on these Corvairs. It's an awesome community to be a part of in this Corvair community. The people in this community are just salt of the earth kind of people. I've had great interactions with a lot of you, and I hope that you guys can chime in on this video in the comments or email me with advice or your experiences with building your motor or your first time. You only have one first time, right? So I'm super excited about it. I'm super happy to be able to share it with you guys. Since the last video where I did the engine bay, I have done a ton of research. I've read through the manuals, shop manuals, parts catalogs. I've probably watched every YouTube video on Corvairs at least twice. I've read a lot of forums, I've asked a lot of questions, and I feel like I'm ready to put this thing together, but I need a game plan, and that's kind of where I'm at today, is just trying to figure out what my game plan is moving forward, specifically right now on making my first parts order. And that's really the stressful part for me, and probably is for a lot of people. I tore the motor down, every nut and bolt, and so I'm sure I can remember mostly how to put it back together again. I don't think that stresses me out too bad. What really gives me the stress is not knowing exactly what to buy. You can only do so much research and ask so many questions, but it comes at the end of the day, you've got to decide on every part. Do I replace it? Do I keep it? Do I just refurbish it myself and get by with it? The cost can get out of hand very quickly if you just replace everything you'd like to on a motor, especially with the Corvair. So my goal is to try to reuse as much as I can and keep the cost down so I can get this thing back on the road. I'm not making a show car. I'm not going to the track. It's not a daily driver. It's just a Sunday cruiser for me and my girl to go out and have dinner or go on a picnic or drive around the lake or just to cruise in every once in a while. So it doesn't have to be perfect, and it doesn't have to be top of the line or high performance. I just want to get it back on the road and safe and reliable. So anytime we want to drive it, we're good to go. So I basically have torn this motor down every nut and bolt. I have spent a lot of time over the last couple of months cleaning, scraping, degreasing, wire wheeling, wire brushing, and detailing, and then cataloging every piece so that I can be organized and make a good assessment as to what is usable and what's not. So I think that's probably it. Let's get you turned around, and I'll kind of show you my game plan, walk you through the parts I have, and we'll go from there. Okay, so starting out, what we've got here to begin with is the fan assembly and bearing lid, and as far as I can tell, this should be good. I haven't had any problems with it. I got the surfaces, the mating surfaces all cleaned up and looks good. I'm not a bearing scientist by any means, but as far as I can tell, this bearing seems good. It spins only for a little bit and stops and doesn't make a bunch of grinding noises, so I'm pretty happy with that. You can let me know if I'm wrong about that, but this is a fairly easy replacement. I don't have to tear the whole motor out again to get that done. But I'm pretty happy with that. I'm going to reuse as much of this as I can. This one, the oil pan cover, is super questionable. I think I'm going to go ahead and just buy another one. I don't remember having any leaks. I don't think that it leaked, which blows my mind because the bolt holes are all super dimpled, and it's been scraped on a bunch. I'm holding the light here. It's been scraped on a bunch, and it's got dings and nicks and wear and tear, You know, the car's 60 years old and has probably 150,000 miles on it, so not a huge surprise that it's had a bunch of wear, but I think I'll go ahead and buy a new oil pan and the bolts that come with it and gaskets and whatnot. So I do plan on buying a whole kit for all of the parts, the whole rebuild kit that has all of the gaskets and rings and bearings and everything that comes with a full rebuild. So all that will be replaced. I'm not reusing any of that stuff. So this input shaft, I think you call it an input shaft, I think is fine. I don't really see any nicks or dings or broken teeth on it. I think that it's good. Don't know much about that part either, but nothing visibly wrong with it. So the pickup tube, I don't know why I can't reuse that. I cleaned it, I rinsed it out both directions and blew it out and degreased it, and it cleaned up real nice. I think I'm probably okay there. The oil filter assembly, it polished up really nicely. I'm super happy with that. The mating surfaces look good. I wasn't really having a leak or any problems with that, so I think that should be good. This section here is something I could really use your guys' advice on. The clutch, the pressure plate, and the flywheel. It wasn't having any trouble at all. This has nothing to do with why I tore the motor out. I just tore the motor out because it was leaking horribly out of the main seals. But while I'm in here, this is something that I don't want to have to tear the whole motor apart again just because I didn't feel like replacing the clutch disc kind of thing, you know? So I'm not a clutch scientist, but from what I can tell, there's nothing really wrong. Let me get you guys in here and to look at this. There's nothing really wrong with it. There's meat on the discs. I'm not into the rivets yet. They're not far from it, but I don't know exactly what the tolerances are. This will not be a daily driver. A Sunday driving, cruising car. I think the life of the thickness should be okay, but I have heard and read and seen videos where guys talk about that grease and oil will soak in and penetrate the pads and make it slip eventually. So I don't want to deal with that. Please let me know if you got any advice for me on that. I don't mind buying a new one of these if I have to, maybe $100 or something, I don't know, but I don't want to have to go in there and do it again just for that. So I'm happy to buy one of those. But I don't want to do is buy a new pressure plate and flywheel. The fingers are all straight and nice on this. There's little wear marks and shiny where the throwout bearing was hitting. I don't know how you get around that, but I think this is okay. The real issue I have is on the underside where the wear marks are. They're not grooves like where you can scratch them with your fingernail and feel them, but there is a wear pattern. I don't know how you would not have a wear pattern. For what that does for a living, it pressures and grinds and rolls and slides across the surfaces. So you're going to have some kind of wear pattern. But I either can just leave it alone because I wasn't having any problem with it, or I think what I understand is I can send it to a machine shop and have them resurface it, or I can just buy all new stuff, which I don't want to do because they're pretty expensive. So if you guys have any advice for me on the conditions of these and what I should do with them, I would really love that. It's just, clutches are one of those things I don't want to have to tear the whole motor out just to replace it because I didn't feel like, buying new stuff. So that's that situation. Moving on, the heck is this thing called? It escapes me. Anyway, bell housing. Yeah, that's what it is. It's a bell housing. It cleaned up really nicely. I don't have any issues with that. I'll have to replace the seal on here. I think that might have been one of the things that I was severely leaking with, but had no problem with that. So moving on down here to the transaxle and gear box, I cleaned it all up. It was an absolute mess from years of leaking from the transaxle and the yokes, and it was full of grime and dirt and clay and leaking transaxle fluid. I cleaned it all up. I got it all prettied up and spritzed up. I am not planning on doing anything to it because I was not having any problems with it. It was shifting in and out of gear just fine. The axles went on and off just fine. I don't know exactly if there's anything I should be looking at to need to replace on it while I'm in here. But let me know if there's anything like that. But I don't really feel like tearing into this thing if I don't have to. Seems like it was doing a good job for me. And yeah, so that's the transmission. The tins I have all organized into this tote, and they all cleaned up really nice. I went through and sanded and degreased and buffed and wire wheeled and even painted some. of them, and they all seem to be pretty good. I've had no issues with those. When they're all laid out on the floor, it seems like I haven't lost any of them, which is always a bonus. So they seem to all line up okay and clean up okay. They're not bent, they're not cracked, they're not rusted. So I should be able to slap those all back together again, and I do have all of the shroud nuts and screws all labeled and bagged and tagged and ready to put on. So those should work out just fine. Okay, so moving on. As you can see, I've got this whole table completely organized and categorized, and the best of my ability. This is where my OCD kind of kicks in, and I kind of sleep better at night when things are all kind of lined up. So that's my sickness. Anyway, this tote here is just kind of full of parts and pieces, nothing special, nothing of interest. I have every nut and bolt and small part labeled and bagged and tagged. All of the screws, nuts, bolts, and washers have all been grinded and wire wheeled and degreased, and they're all ready to go on and be good. So oil cooler I've had no problem with. Replace the seals on it so it doesn't leak. Otherwise, I think we're good with that. Cleaned up really nicely. This section here is the stuff that it's crazy. All of this stuff, I'm not sure if I need to replace it, and everything adds up. It's a bunch of money, but these are things that I think I'm going to go ahead and replace. I think this is called the throwout bearing. Again, I wasn't having any trouble with the shifting or the clutch working, but the bearing has some play in it. You can see, and it's a little grindy sounding, and you can see kind of a groove has been cut in it from the fingers on the pressure plate. I don't know if that's bad, but it couldn't cost that much money. I think I'm going to go ahead and just replace that, just to be safe. The oil pump gears, again, I don't know if that there's anything wrong with these. I don't know what I'm looking for, but there's nothing broken. There's nothing sheared off. There's nothing, obviously wrong with them, but I think I'm going to go ahead and just get a new kit. I think I might have heard something about a high pressure one or something, I don't know, and there's some plastic gauge situation with the lid and gasket widths, and I'll get all that worked out. That's no problem. The thermostats for the clutch, for the chokes, I don't know if they're bad. This spring right here on the left is a little, I think I might have caught it on something when I was cleaning it and bent it. I don't know. The chokes haven't worked really, really well. So I think I'm going to go ahead and just replace those if I can find them, because I just think that they're hard enough to tune these motors and keep them running really well, and having good working chokes and thermostats and all that is worth it to me. So I just think I'm going to replace that. Now, I didn't think I was going to replace the rockers. Let me bring it to the light here. But you can see, they look okay in the inside, but you can see, I don't know if you can make that out or not, but there is, on top of there just being wear, I'm sure you're going to have, the paint's going to be worn off or whatever where the push rod hits, but I have like ridges, like on the left side here, it's like ridged out, like it's been like stuck in one place or something. I don't know, that doesn't look healthy to me. I don't know if that's a big deal. I don't know if that's important, but for me, it's not worth it. I want the valve train to be really strong and good. I don't want to fight problems, so I'm just going to go ahead and replace all those. The push rods themselves, they all seemed to be like darn near perfectly straight. I don't have any real problems with them. There's nothing like bent or broken, but I did put them on a glass table and rolled them around a bunch and looked at them really closely, and a few of them did kind of have a little bit of a hoop in them, or when you rolled them, the ends would lift up and down and up and down. So I don't know how important that is. I don't know if the bent ones of these that I have that are slightly bent are resulting in the ridges that I have on the rockers. Since I don't know, I'm not going to chance it. I'm just going to buy new ones. Maybe that's foolish. This is where you guys can chime in on the comments and tell me, hey, Dave, you're kind of going overboard. They're fine. If there's a little bit of bent rods or the bent push rods, don't worry about it. I don't know. The push rod tubes, again, probably half of them look really good, but the other half have big dents and gouges where someone took vice grips and used it to remove the push rod tubes, and they're ugly, they're gouged out, and maybe a couple of them even look like they might even have penetrated with the pliers through and could cause a leak. I don't want to have to replace all these. Maybe it's overkill because you can't even see them, but that's another thing. I'm just planning on going ahead and just getting new ones if they're available. I've never looked for new push rod tubes, but that's on the gig. So moving forward, the carburetors are awesome. I fully rebuilt them last year when I had the car running. They have full deluxe kit rebuild kits in them. They work wonderfully. They tuned up awesome. It was quite the experience learning how to balance these dual carbs and get them all, the linkages all perfect and everything. But I got that all pretty well figured out, and I'm super happy with how they work. So I think I don't have to do anything with the carburetors except stick them back on and throw some gas down them. The distributor I also serviced when I was in it last year. Don't have any problem with that. The teeth on it look good. The end pin that hooks up to the oil pump, that looks fine. I don't think there's any problem there. I got these two, I think you call them bellows for the doors, the heat doors. I've got one that I think I replaced, and it is on the top one here is super tight, looks good. And the bottom one is a little less tight and good. It's not dead and fully opened up, but it's like 20% not as good, whatever that's called. So I'm probably gonna have one, the top one is gonna be a really good working door, and the bottom one's gonna be a meh looking working door. I can live with that. Not a big deal. If I have to get a new bellow later on, I'll do that. But from what I understand, the ones you can buy, the aftermarket ones, are junk, and I'm probably better off with that as an original that isn't perfect. So no problem. The starter, I got no problem with the starter. I cleaned it all up and scraped all the crap off of it and got it all nice. It spins well, it engages well. I never had a problem starting the car. It doesn't make any weird noises, so I'm good there. This, I think it's a tension pulley. I'm a little bit weirded out on this. You guys, please tell me what you think about it. It looks fine, and it's not a hard one to replace. I don't have to tear the motor out to do it, but when I spin it, it just spins and spins and spins and spins and spins, and it sounds a little grimy. Again, I'm not a bearing scientist, but I think it's supposed to kind of go a little bit and then stop and have some pressure with all the friction built into it. I'm not sure about that. I'm not planning on replacing it, and maybe unless someone, one of you guys pipes up and says, "Hey, Dave, that's going to be a problem. That's going to break something," then I'll buy another one. But so far as I understand, that bearing is probably going to pass the mustard. So this balance wheel, I think it's called a balance wheel. I think it's good. It cleaned up. There's no broken parts or cracks. I think we're okay there. From what I understand, these two lines right here, I think that's kind of they're there to know that if it slips, these lines won't be lined up and you'll know that it's bad. Mine's good. So I'm happy with that. No problem with that. The oil pump housing, I have also no problems with. I think that I'm going to replace the oil pump that goes in the back of that. This mating surfaces all turned out good. When I took this thing out, I had a pile of silver sludge in the bottom of this thing from, I'm guessing bearing material or something that was wearing out in the motor. So I'm glad I took it apart and got it worked out, because it had a pile of silver bearing material. So that looks like it's all good. I don't need to replace that. Now the heads and the crank and the pistons and cylinders all went off to a machine shop. I had them serviced, paid a few $100 and had a full servicing on those. They went ahead and rebuilt my heads. They were able to, I guess, reuse most of all the parts except the seals, and they've got some kind of cool process where they lap over the valve seats, over the valve, the valve housing, seat housing, to keep them all tight. I don't know, it's some kind of magic they do, but apparently they've done a nice job getting my heads all prepared, and so I don't have to worry about that. The crank worked out well as well, as far as I know. They ground it down to the first level of grinding, which is like 10 thousandths or 10 under or whatever that's called. So I just know that when I buy bearings for them, I've got to get the appropriate size. But they polished it and ground it and balanced it. It looks good, checked out at the machine shop. So happy about that. The cam, this is another one of those magical mystery machines. I don't know. I'm not a cam guy. I'm not a cam scientist. There's guys I know I've seen on videos where they can look at a cam from across the room and say, oh, that's a burned lobe, that thing's smoked, that's a smoked lobe. What's a smoked lobe? I don't even know what that means. If it was broken, if it had chips taken out of it, I could see that. I would be able to understand that, but I just don't know. The only thing I do know is I've been given advice from pretty good sources that you just never reuse a cam, especially the cam gear. And I don't know how you would get that cam gear off without breaking it. So I'm just gonna heed the warnings of the community and replace the cam and cam gear. Now, apparently there's an upgrade option where you can just, you can buy like a never falls off situation on the gear. So they add some kind of keyway to it or something where that it's like, it's impossible for it to come off. I don't know if guys are driving down the road and their cam gears are falling off. I haven't heard of that, but let me know what you guys think about that. Is that an extra expense that's worth it? If it is, if some of you guys can let me know why, or you're having your personal experiences on it, I'll be happy to pay the extra money for that as well, because I don't want to have to tear this apart again just because I didn't, spend the extra money on that. So the generator is super cool. This is one of the first things I did when I got the car. The generator wasn't working great, so I took it completely apart. I polished all of the metal. I cleaned up all of the electronics inside. I sanded and painted the entire housing with this pewter-like metallic paint, and it's held up and looks really good. It almost looks new. Super happy with that. Don't have to deal with that. The block is in good shape. I just need to do maybe a little bit more prepping on the sealing surfaces, gasket surfaces, and make sure that I'm completely cleaned out on all of the bearing and cam mating surfaces, and she should be good to go. All of the head bolts or head nuts came off nice. All of these studs stayed in except one. This one here that's still got the nut on it came out with, the whole thing came out and came unthreaded from the block. So from what I understand, I just need to, it still threads just fine and holds pretty well. I just need to get a bunch of red Loctite in there and tighten it up and make it the same distance as the rest, and she should be good. I know that if they're bad, you can drill them out and do inserts and all that. I don't think I need to do that. If you guys have an opinion on that, let me know. But otherwise, the block should be good to go. So the shroud, last year I took and sanded that thing down and painted it up with the same paint as the generator. So it still looks really nice. The crossover tube I painted, and the air filter housing I painted and got a replacement sticker on it. So that all still looks good. No problem with that. The fan, I sanded it down and painted. If you haven't ever sanded one of these down, that's a joyous time because all the little sides and curves and angles, but it's holding up real well. Looks good. No problem with that. And the final piece of my puzzle are the pistons and cylinders. And I have really no problems with these. They were pretty corrody and filled. When I first got the car, there was mouse nests built over the entirety of these. There was zero airflow going across them, which probably caused some of the overheating and bearing problems and burnt oil and whatever I inherited with the car. But they're all cleaned up. I degreased them and wire wheeled them and brushed them, and they look pretty good. These went to the machine shop, and I don't know what they did to them. I don't really see where there's like new crosshatch marks inside like I've seen on videos from them honing it. Maybe they didn't need to. Maybe they just checked out. The only thing I see that's different than when I took them in is the bottoms of the pistons themselves are kind of have this gray coating on them. Maybe they like flatten out the surface of them and then put a protecting coating on them. I don't know. I am not a piston scientist or a machine shop guy. I have no idea. I just am kind of trusting that the money I paid at the machine shop actually did something for me, and they certainly slide in and out nicely, and hopefully I'll just put some rings on those and they will be good to go. So that's it, guys. That's all my parts. That's all my plans. Please let me know. I'm sure almost everybody watching this video knows more about this process than I do, which I love. I love learning, and I love experimenting and taking on challenges. Yeah, I think that's about it. Okay guys, so that's my game plan, and hopefully it works out and I'm on the right track here. And so, let me know if you guys have any other ideas for me and any directions I can go. I'd love to hear from you. And so hopefully my next video on this process will be once I've made a parts order and have had them delivered, and I'll be hopefully ready to start putting the block together and getting all the bearings and the cam and pistons and all that put together, and kind of just get her going. So I think that'll do it for today. Please don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.